Good morning. I hope you have an amazing day or evening today or this afternoon or tonight. In this episode, we continue the series of episodes of podcast that we discuss in it the concept of pronunciation of English. We analyze certain sentence structures for the purpose of the beneficiaries, whom in this case are you, the audience, the listeners, those people who want to benefit as much as possible from the structure of the podcast lessons that we have developed so far for the purpose of benefiting and enriching their experience, their oral experience, their auditory experience. When we say their auditory experience, we mean the experience of listening to certain podcasts in English. It's very informative to put yourself in the challenging mode of listening to a variety of podcasts, whether detective ones or podcasts about language learning or podcasts about psychology or cognitive science or mathematics. Any kind of podcast fits the purpose you need to listen to, because that is part of your auditory experience. The sonic benefit of listening to podcasts is beyond imagination. It's very important to have that idea in mind. Because once you listen to people talking English, once you try to embrace and become part of the concept of the good listener, your mindset is going to change. Your ability to listen and adapt your mindset to this kind of experiences that are shared by others is beyond imagination. Therefore, you have to embrace the fact that listening is very important. It's the first channel that brings you to the court of English language and be able to listen to a variety of accents and dialects and condition your ears to this kind of beautiful language. Fine. Now, when I say fine, the word fine has so myriad amount of meanings. I don't recall certain word that has this amount of meanings except for the word set. Because if you look it up in dictionary, the word fine means marvelous. It means amazing. And the pronunciation of it is fine, fine, or fine, fine, or fine in American English. And the thesaurus, when we say the word thesaurus, thesaurus is a kind of dictionary that offers you the synonyms and antonyms of certain words. The other synonyms for the word fine are excellent, first class, first rate, great, exceptional, outstanding, admirable, quality, superior, splendid, magnificent, beautiful, exquisite, choice, select, prime, supreme, superb, wonderful, sublime, superlative, very good, of high quality, of a standard second to none, top rate, rare, and top notch, splendiferous, and stellar. Look, as I said, This word is very interesting because you look at the list, the endless list of meanings that this word has. So despite the fact that we just talk about one single word, it's like an atom in the universe of language, but it carries so much nuclear energy that carries this amount of dimensions of meanings. Never underestimate the power of fine. That sounds like a good title of a book, maybe. I'm showing you this list, this laundry list of vocabulary. Laundry list is a very common formal expression. It means a long list, especially if you're married and your wife gives you a laundry list of items that you need to go and shop for. So when we talk about the word fine carries so many meanings, but they're tied to the context. We can say stellar, but fine and stellar, they are synonyms to a certain extent. They're not equivalent. When we talk about the linguistic equivalence, we talk about a twin word that carries exactly the same meaning of the other word. And in my own personal experience, I can tell that there is no one single word in English that carries 100% similar meaning to another word that can be replaced to deliver certain meaning. Words in English carry certain kind of inference, certain kind of indication that is not replaceable by other words. Other words can replace this word to indicate, to approximate the meaning, to make you get closer to the intention of the speaker as a listener, but they might not get you 100% right to the same spot of that word. And let's think of it when a translator attempts to translate a certain religious context like Holy Quran or the Bible into another language. There's rhetorical meaning that is carryable by this word in Arabic once it's translated and transferred into another language. It loses the rhetorical weight of it. The gravity of that meaning is lost, no matter how professional the translator is to convey the meaning. Let's think of the word book. When we talk about the word book in Arabic, which is kitab, and the linguistic equivalent to this word is a book in English. Now, in certain contexts, the meaning of the word is interchangeable in Arabic and English. When we talk about the book, where's the book? This is the book. He goes by the book. Context determine the reference of that word. And in every context you speak, the meaning gets altered because of the intention of the speaker. And the intention of the speaker is decisive to indicate that this word means this and this word means that. So it is very important to bear that in mind when we speak something. And I know that I mentioned this before, that the idea is not to just narrate the story and end the podcast. It's far more important than just that. There's linguistic gravity, there are dimensions that we need to be aware of from this kind of back and forth discussion of language. The beauty of the discussion about the dimensions of the word fine outweigh the narrativeness of the story, and ending the podcast with just telling you the moral of the story. So when we talk about the word fine, each context that the word is used in is different. And sometimes you get fined as a verb. If the police officer finds you in the intersection crossing the red line or the red light. If you cross the red light before it gets green, you get fined. So the linguistic reference here indicates a verb that carries some legality to it. And depending on the jurisprudence of the police officer, he's going to charge you a certain amount of money as a fine for this. If your wife says, it's fine, you can go, it defeats the purpose of going because she doesn't mean it's fine. It means that she has something that you haven't settled with her. So it is very important to interpret the intention of the speaker based on their facial expressions, bodily gestures, the eye contact, the way of the proxemics of the speakers to each other, and the way they interact. There's certain kind of chemistry. I mean, don't we say that they have good vibe, good chemistry for lovers? So if your wife, and I keep saying this because it's very important, if your wife says, it's good, it's fine, you can go with your friends, I feel safe here. The word fine carries so much meaning. It's like the tip of the iceberg. There are more repercussions to your attempt of going than just saying, it's fine. The linguistic meaning doesn't go beyond the intention of what I understood, of what she said. That's not the true case here. I mean, if we just analyze the word fine, we can spend hours and hours going through each one of the context of this word and seeing how it completely alters the meaning depending on the context of what you're saying. If we look here at the second part of the word fine, we find that there is this example. He proposed marriage to a fine lady. So the word fine carries beauty-oriented indication here. So the word fine means beautiful. So it carries this beautification principle here. And it's completely different from the context of the police officer charging someone because of crossing the red light. So there are alternative antonymous relation between the first context and the second context. When we look here and see that the reference of the word fine is beauty, look at the number of synonyms that we can collect here. Admirable, praiseworthy, praiseworthy, praiseworthy. Laudable, estimable, upright, upstanding, respectable, seemly, ladylike, gentlemanly, attractive, good-looking, handsome, lovely, pretty, striking, stunning, delightful, well-favored. Scottish and Northern English, bony, and there is this archaic, comely and fair. If you look here, each one of these words, despite the fact that some of them are academically oriented and some of them are not common, some of them are non-standard, some of them are surfacing the daily use, and some others are very rare, even would sound very strange to the ears of native speakers once they are used. This is the ocean of English. This is the ocean of language. Language is very deep, and the tip of the iceberg is the kind of word that you keep hearing, these kind of words that tap on your lovely ears every day. Once you get adjusted and conditioned to a certain amount of time that you spend listening to podcast, to my podcast, or to any one of the celebrities that you're following or the podcast makers out there, you need to embrace the fact that you need to condition your ears to a certain amount of listening. Other than that, the concept of listening and improving your English is just a wasted effort. Now, we have spent some time talking about the word fine, with the idea that in every certain kind of context, the intention of the speaker determine in general. So the context and the intention of the speaker determine the meaningfulness of this word or that word. And this is what you have to cater for. And when you speak, you have to usher your language in this kind of context. If you intend to say something that might sound disrespectful, but you are a very diplomatic person, you need to cater for that. Otherwise, the other person is going to feel offended. The other person is just going to feel insulted because of that. So, in our daily communication of language, we are manipulators, linguistically speaking, of the terms that we have amassed in our lifespan, based on our experience, based on the contact and communication that we have with each other. We're just players in a game of communication. And every word some people say, they say it with the intention of meaning something, with the intention of getting something. Because language is just a means of communication, but this communication has an end. And the end, selfishly speaking, belongs to the speaker. Like, what am I trying to say if I say something beautiful to this person? What am I getting out of it? Speech is a merchandise that people trade for certain physical or mental benefits. This is at least in my own experience, except for the pure intention of your friends, your family members, your parents, whom their major interest is to see you successful to some extent. Other than that, everybody uses his or her language for certain benefits and interests. So when you speak, there's an intention that you seek for and you deliver to the ears of the respondents. And the respondents have certain intention when they respond back to you. And the mutual interest of both parties is determined by context. That's why I really think context is the most important word when it comes to language and communication. It determines the intention of the speaker. It determines the intention of the listener of listening to this word or that word. It eventually funneled down and boiled to the fact that I have certain psychological or physical needs that I need to fulfill of this communication. If I talk nicely to my manager, my intention is more psychological, to appease him and appease his anger and make him feel comfortable. Otherwise, he's just going to cut my salary or payment, or he's going to give me a hard time on my work station. If I say things nicely to my wife, or if you're married, if you have a partner, the intention is more physical. If you say certain beautiful sentences to a diplomat, that's because you want to maintain the bilateral relations between the two countries. In every situation and in every context, the intention of the speaker determines his word selection. To escape the gravity of miscommunication, most of people start their speech with very nice, and welcoming messages back and forth. And if you focus on the way people speak in Middle East, there's so many skirmishes of greetings back and forth. And the purpose of that is to develop good foundation of friendliness and showcasing hospitality and escaping from enmity that might be interpreted in this way or another. The case that we have here is that we have spent around half an hour talking only about one word. So if we dial deeper, we can say that this word is so complicated that it's very simple. Look at example number 3, because we have talked about example number 2 and 3. The meaning of the word fine here is different. It means all right, acceptable, suitable, good, good enough, agreeable, fair, passable, satisfactory, adequate, reasonable, up to scratch. And look at the beautiful expression here, up to scratch, up to the mark, up to standard, up to par, average, tolerable, and informal, okay? And tickety-boo. Even though these are very informal expressions, but they are used interchangeably to mean fine. Some people might ask, why do we have this spectrum of vocabulary? I would say this collection is generated based on statistical observation by the lexicographers. Lexicographer is the person who's specialized in designing dictionaries, and they try to find common ground that brings together certain kind of expressions. I guarantee you that none of them is suitable in the context of fine if the intention of the speaker is different. I mean, we cannot replace the word fine with the word tolerable. And if the speaker doesn't want to say that word. It's always the discretion of the speaker and the context of use. These two factors are decisive. They are necessary to determine the replacement of this word and which word we have to choose in this regard. So it's very important to adequately say that there is no one single word in English that can replace the word fine if the intention of the speaker is only to use fine. So if your intention is to use fine, that's it. Use it. It might be cliche word. It might be cheesy, informal, formally speaking. But if this is your intention and if the context is conditioned to use this word without fearing any repercussions, then use it. Nobody is going to judge you negatively on that. I spent half an hour talking about one single word in this podcast, and the reason of which is to introduce you to the multi-dimensional sphere of terms in English and how they can be interpreted differently based on the context and the intention of the speaker in this regard. So please don't blame me if I'm taking so much time in finishing this podcast or this short story. It's not about the story. It's about the depth of the story. It's about the narrativeness of the story. It's about preventing you from being misunderstood. It's giving you the chance to look at the beauty of the universe of language based on the multidimensional, multispectral aspect of English and vocabulary. I might be blamed for that, but it's for the purpose of improving your sonic skills, your auditory skills, and to practice pronunciation better. Have a wonderful day or evening. مدرب اللغة وليد خالد.